instructions were written already. It was given already by Moses to Jehoshua before he died. All he had to do is obey the letter of that promise from point A to point B. Now, mind you, I want you to get that vision in your mind. You are talking about an Israelite nation who've never been in the battle with the children and everything, and then they're going to conquer the 7 nations that's surrounding that promised land of Canaan. That's why when the Israelites find out who are the ones they're going to conquer, here we go. In chapter 9. Let's go in chapter 9. Chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. Here comes the giants. And it came to pass, we know the kings which were on the side of Jordan, in the hills, in the valleys, in all the coasts of the great sea, over against Lebanon, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, that they gathered themselves together to fight whom? With Joshua. And you know, when you say Joshua, Joshua is representing the whole land and tribes of Israel. And Israel with one accord. Now, do you know what the Israelites feel that moment when they found out who are the enemies? Let's go, chapter 10, verse 2. Now, here comes the place of the battle. Gibeon, one of the places that they tried to conquer. You know what the Israelites fear? Here it is. They, the Israelites, feared greatly. Why? Because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof is what? Mighty. Now you're talking about men who've been in war and in battle, and you are pitting it against Israelites who've never been in the battle. But did Jehoshua was able to conquer the 7 nations? Yes, he did. Why? Take a look at verse 8. The same chapter 10. In verse 8, here's what Father Yah told to Jehoshua. And Father Yahweh said unto Jehoshua, fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them that stand before thee. Hallelujah. Father Yah said to Joshua, don't fear them, because I already give them to your hand. What does it mean? Jehoshua is not the one going to fight for their battle. It's not him. Because look, take a look at verse 14. It says, there was no day like that before it or after it, that Father Yah hearkened unto the voice of a man, for Father Yahweh fought for Israel. Woo. My brothers and sisters, we are not the one who's going to fight our own battle.
Thank you.
If we believe Father Yah, woo!
Yes,
Yes, he will. He will fight our battle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Victory is his. The only question is, will you trust him? The reason being why sometimes we mess up in our life, because we try to do it on our own.
That's right. Thank you, Father.
You know, there's a testimony last night of one of our brothers in the Philippines. This brother's been a bank guard. He is a guard, security guard of a bank. One of the big banks in the Philippines. He's been working there for quite a while. And he told us last night that the company offered him to be the supervisor of his job. They offered him a company car to drive of his own and an increase of his salary. The only thing that he needed to do as being supervisor, he needed to do work some of the Shabbats. You know what this brother said? I'm okay with my present job. I am not going to have that car, nor that extra salary in my pocket if I'm going to transgress the law of my Father, which is keeping you.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Father.
And sometimes those types of giant that we see in our lives, it is on us if we are going to accept the challenge or not. And if the giant is sometimes so little for us, but sometimes it counts how we prove to our Father how we trust Him in our daily living.
Hallelujah.
As simple as that.
Yes.
But we know that the blessing with Father Yahweh, as we know, cannot be counted. All we have to do is trust Him in every day of our life.
Yes. Thank you.
The next giant slayer, literally, he conquered the giant. You know the story? David and Goliath. Now, this time of this story, David is just a teenager, probably 16 or 17. Young lad. Okay? And we know the story. But to give you where to find that story is in 1 Samuel. Okay? And I want you to listen to this. My dear children, you know, I'm looking at our daughter, Cassandra. You know, last Sunday, she was awarded a literary essay about his Star of David. Okay? Actually, it was first time in my school that I heard a Jewish essay about who is your Star of David and how you are going to explain it. Now, in Cassandra's essay is that, how do you have it, baby? There are things that you do in life that you don't want to share to anybody, just like you're ashamed of it. But then at the end of the day, it becomes just like your shining moment. Now, we know the story of the Star of David. Before, it is a symbol of shame for the Israelites to wear it because they don't want to say to anybody that they are Israelites. During the time of Hitler and everything, they know that once you prove that you are that one, you are cast out. We know the story. But I'm looking at her a while ago while she started the song that she sang a while ago.
Yes.
I'm looking backwards because when Father Yah allowed us to come here in America way back in 2009, she's only barely 3 years old in 6 months.
Yeah.
3 years old in 6 months. Now in a week, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, she's going to be 16.
Wow.
Wow. It's a blessing.
And she's going to be immersed today. Father Yahweh.
Praise God.
And she's going to have her driver's education maybe during the summer. You see how Father Yah
He
works in our lives.
works.
Because way back then, my giant also is how to find or where to find an assembly or congregation that my children can still exercise their faith.
Hallelujah.
And COY was the answer way back in 2012. Now here comes David.
Thank you, Father.
Now, there is a point in the history of Israel that Israelites face their literal giant when Saul declared war with the Philistines. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 4. Here's the story, and I want you to visualize Goliath. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath. And Goliath was 6 cubits in a span. Now, do you know how tall is 6 cubits in a span is? 1 cubit is 18 inches. So 6 cubit is 9 feet. 1 span is 9 inches. So Goliath is standing 9 feet and 9 inches. I tried to measure up to this ceiling. It's close to 9 feet. So imagine Goliath is taller than this ceiling. And being a warrior, probably he's weighing 350 or 400 pounds, including his armors and everything. And he is about to face any soldier of the Israelites. But look at what happened. Huh? In verse 23 and 24, here comes. In verse 23, Goliath talked with them. Behold, there come up the champion of the Philistines of God, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And look at what verse 24 is stating. And all of the men of Israel, when they saw the man, 9 feet 9 inches, 350 pounds or something, what they do? They ran away. They fled. Why? Because they were afraid. And in verse 42, the same chapter, in verse 42, we know David. But before we go down in verse 42, let's go first in verse 34. When David went to King Saul and told King Saul that he wants to fight Goliath, David is telling Saul his credentials. Because Saul could not believe that David, as young as he is, can fight Goliath. But this is what David said to Saul in verse 34. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant keep his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And then David said, And I went after the lion, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. When he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant, David said to Saul, slew both the lion and the bear. And these are circumcised Philistines shall be as one of them, seeing he had defied the armies of the living Elohim. You see, David is not fighting for himself. David is saying this circumcised Philistine is defying the army of the Most High. And look at what David said in verse 37. This is what makes David so, brave, in telling Saul that I can beat the Goliath, I can beat the giant. Look at verse 37. He said, David said, moreover, Father Yah, that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he said, will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine.
Yeah. Thank you, Father.
So when David faced Goliath, here comes the face down in verse 43. Here comes the face down. And sometimes we do that in ourselves too. Sometimes we face our giants with only one thing in our heart. The trust to our Father that He will bring us through of our giants.
That's right.
In verse 43 he said, and the Philistine, which is Goliath, said unto David, am I a dog, that thou comes to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his mightiness. That's the thing that Goliath was missed. When he cursed the Elohim